For almost 10 years, Emily and I had what seemed like the perfect marriage. We met in college, built our lives together, and celebrated milestones like buying our dream home and traveling the world. She was my best friend, my partner in everything, or so I thought. But the cracks in our relationship didn't appear suddenly. At first, they were small things. Emily became more distracted, spent hours on her phone, and started working late more often. But love can blind you to the obvious, and I convinced myself that her behavior was just stress or a passing phase. One evening, while clearing off the kitchen counter, I noticed her phone light up. It wasn't locked, and I caught a glimpse of the notification. It was a text from someone named Dan. "You make me so happy. Can't wait to see you again." I froze. My chest tightened as I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next morning, while Emily was in the shower, I did something I never thought I would. I went through her phone. What I found shattered me. The messages between Emily and Dan were explicit and emotional. They exchanged "I love you" texts, reminisced about secret dinners, and made plans for their next meetups. She even mocked our life together, saying she felt trapped in our marriage. The betrayal was unbearable. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed time to process everything and gather my thoughts. I hired a private investigator to confirm what I already knew. Within a week, he handed me a file that made everything real. It contained pictures of them meeting at a hotel, receipts from fancy dinners, and even it was a mistake. A mistake. I snapped. "You didn't accidentally book hotel rooms or exchange love notes, Emily. This was deliberate. You chose to betray me over and over again." I told her to pack her things and leave. She begged for another chance, promising she'd end things with Dan and go to therapy, but it was too late. My trust was gone. She left that night, taking only a suitcase. The house, once filled with warmth, now felt cold and empty. I thought the worst was behind me, but 3 days later, there was a knock at my door. Standing there was Dan. He looked nervous and out of place. "What do you want?" I asked, my anger barely contained. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married," he began, his voice shaking. "She told me you two were separated. I had no idea. At first, I didn't believe him. I was ready to throw him off my property, but as he kept talking, his story started to make sense. Emily had lied to him too. She spun a story about being in a loveless marriage and needing emotional support. Dan showed me his own messages with Emily. In one of them, she claimed I was controlling and emotionally distant, a complete fabrication. He even told me that when he found out she was married, he ended things immediately and came to apologize. We stood there on the porch, two strangers who had been manipulated by the same person. "She played us both," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. Dan nodded. "I'm sorry, man. If I had known the truth, I never would have gone near her." After he left, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and strangely relief. Dan wasn't the enemy I thought he was. He was just another victim of Emily's lies. In the days that followed, I began rebuilding my life. I focused on myself, my healing, and learning to trust again after he left. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and strangely relief. Dan wasn't the enemy I had thought he was. He was just another victim of Emily's lies. In the days that followed, I began rebuilding my life. I focused on my work, reconnected with friends, and spent more time with my family. I had to find a way to move forward, even though the betrayal still stung. Slowly, I started to heal. Emily tried to reach out to me a few times, sending messages and leaving voicemails, but I ignored them. The damage was done, and I knew there was no going back. I couldn't let myself fall back into the same cycle of lies and betrayal. I learned a painful lesson. Sometimes, the person you trust the most can be the one who hurts you the deepest. But I also learned that it's possible to rebuild your life, even after the most devastating of betrayals.